In 1870s Montana, it wasn't uncommon for a mail-order bride to arrive from the distant east. Abigail Neville was one of them. As her stagecoach bumped along the dusty road toward the city of Helena, she had no idea that her life would soon take a turn she couldn't have imagined in her wildest dreams. She knew that Timothy Mitchell, her husband-to-be, had written that he was a simple man, yet everyone in town knew his name. Abigail thought perhaps he was kind and hardworking, thus popular in the community. However, the reality was much more complex. The young woman's fingers nervously fidgeted with the medallion on her neck, the only memento inherited from her mother. Had she made the right decision when she left her entire life behind for the promise of an unknown man? The stagecoach jolted to a stop at the edge of Helena. Abigail peered out the window and caught sight of the dusty main street where riders and wagons moved about. The mountains surrounding the town loomed grimly in the background. The journey from Boston had been long and exhausting, but her correspondence with Timothy Mitchell gave her hope for a new, quieter life. She was 20 years old when her parents died in an influenza epidemic, leaving her alone in the world. Previously, she had worked as a companion for a wealthy family, and when she lost that position, she found work in a textile mill, where conditions only worsened. 14-hour workdays, barely sufficient pay, and the mill owner's son who constantly harassed her. That's when she saw the advertisement in the newspaper, Montana Territory, a man seeking a companion. In his last letter, Timothy wrote that he couldn't come for her personally, but would send someone to help. As Abigail stepped down the coach stairs, she spotted an older man with a mustache holding a sign with her name. Howard, Timothy's ranch manager, introduced himself and took Abigail's single suitcase. The woman was surprised when, instead of a simple wagon, she was led to an elegant carriage. Howard noticed her confusion. "It was a long journey, madam. Mr. Mitchell wanted you to travel comfortably." The carriage traveled through the town, but instead of heading toward the outskirts as Abigail would have expected for a farmer, it headed toward the town center. Abigail watched the passing buildings with increasing interest. The town was larger than she thought, with multiple-story houses, a bank, and numerous shops. People on the street tipped their hats to Howard and cast curious glances at the woman in the carriage. "There's the Bank of Helena," Howard pointed to an imposing building. "And over there is the new hotel. Both were built in the past 3 years. Helena is developing quickly," he added. "It's not like other mining towns that rise overnight and disappear just as fast." The carriage stopped in front of a massive white-columned house that surpassed everything around it in size and beauty. A well-maintained garden with flowers and trees spread out in front of the house. "We've arrived, Miss Neville. This is the Mitchell house." Abigail sat frozen. "This can't be." Timothy wrote that he was a simple farmer. "I think there's been a mistake. I'm Timothy Mitchell's fiancé. He's a farmer." Howard chuckled softly. "Mr. Mitchell indeed owns land, madam, more than anyone else in the county." Before Abigail could respond, the house door opened, and a tall, broad-shouldered man stepped out. His blue eyes sparkled brightly in his sun-tanned face. His dark hair was cut short, his beard well-groomed. He didn't look like a wealthy man. He wore a simple shirt and vest. His boots were dusty. But there was something about him that immediately commanded authority. "Abigail, I'm glad we finally meet." Timothy Mitchell's voice was deep and reassuring. Abigail stood before him confused, unable to speak. The man stepped closer and took her suitcase from Howard. "I know you have many questions. Come inside. We need to talk." Abigail followed the man into the house and gasped. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. Carved furniture, crystal chandeliers, paintings on the walls, and the servants who quietly hurried past them. A tiny Japanese butler bowed deeply before them. "Hashimoto, please tell Mrs. "Jenkins, that our guest has arrived." The butler nodded and disappeared. "He's of Japanese descent," Timothy explained. "I met him in San Francisco. He's an excellent gardener. He designed the entire estate." Timothy led her to the living room where an elderly woman was waiting. Her gray hair in a strict bun and her straight posture gave a military impression. "Abigail, this is Mrs. Jenkins, the housekeeper. She will help you get settled." Mrs. Jenkins nodded kindly, then left the room. Timothy offered Abigail a seat in a comfortable armchair. "I believe I owe you an explanation." Abigail finally found her voice. "You wrote that you were a farmer, a simple man." Timothy nodded and sat down across from her. "I am, Abigail. I started as a farmer when I arrived in Montana, with almost no money in my pocket. But I discovered something on my land, silver, which then changed everything." Abigail understood now. A silver mine. He was one of those lucky people who got rich from mining. "Why didn't you tell me this in your letters?" Timothy stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "I've had bad experiences before, women who were only interested in me for my wealth. When we started corresponding, I wanted to get to know you without my money standing between us." Abigail felt anger washing over her. This relationship was built on a lie. "No matter how well-intentioned Timothy was, you deceived me. I think I made a big mistake. I want to go home." Timothy turned around, surprise visible on his face. "Go home? But you've just arrived." "This isn't what I agreed to. I didn't want a rich husband and a big house. I wanted a simple life where we could be equal partners." Despite the summer heat, a chill ran down Abigail's spine. What should she do now? She didn't have enough money to travel home. As if reading her thoughts, Timothy spoke. "Of course, I'll cover your travel expenses if you really want to leave. But please, give me a chance. 1 week. Get to know my real life, the town. Then decide." Abigail reluctantly agreed. A week didn't seem like a long time, and indeed, where would she hurry to? Boston was no longer her home. Mrs. Jenkins led her to a spacious, bright room with a view of the mountains. A brand-new dress was laid out on the bed. "Mr. Mitchell thought you might like to change after your journey," the woman explained. "Dinner will be served in an hour." After Mrs. Jenkins left, Abigail walked to the window. Was she being unfair? Perhaps, but a lie remained a lie, no matter how well-intentioned it was. Dinner was quiet and tense. Timothy tried to initiate conversation, but Abigail's responses were short and measured. After dinner, Timothy invited Abigail to his study. The walls were covered with books, maps, and documents lay on the desk. "This is the real me, Abigail. This is where I plan the town's future." Timothy took out a bottle of whiskey and filled 2 glasses. "I know a lady doesn't drink this, but I thought you might make an exception." Abigail surprised the man when she took the glass. Her father often gave her a sip of whiskey when she had a cold. "So, what's your plan for the town?" The question reflected genuine interest. Timothy's eyes lit up, and he began explaining his ideas. Schools, hospital, railway, a real community, not just a temporary mining camp. In the following days, Abigail got to know the town of Helena and Timothy Mitchell's real life. The man indeed owned a significant portion of the town. The bank on Main Street, the hotel, several shops, and of course the mines. But to Abigail's surprise, Timothy didn't behave like a wealthy man. He got up early in the morning and personally supervised the work. He knew every employee's name and inquired about their families. When they visited the mine, Timothy wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. He descended into the mine with the workers and checked the conditions. The workers greeted him with respect, but didn't seem tense or fearful in his presence. Timothy explained to Abigail how the mine worked, how they found the silver, and how they mined it. "In the first years, I worked down there myself," he said. "It's important to know what this work means." When they headed back to town, Timothy unexpectedly stopped the horse by a small creek. "This is my favorite place," he said. "I come here when I want to think." The creek's clear water sparkled in the sunlight. Timothy spread a blanket on the ground and took out a basket from the carriage. "I thought we might have lunch here." The basket contained cold roast chicken, bread, cheese, and a bottle of wine. While eating, Timothy talked about his family, about his parents who died young, his brother who fell in the war. "You're my only family now, Abigail." "Of course. Only if you want it that way." The words sounded sincere, and Abigail felt her heart soften a little. On the third day, they visited the town school. The building was new, bright, and spacious. "Did you build this school?" Abigail asked. Timothy nodded. "When I arrived here, there wasn't a proper school in town. Children have a right to education. All of them." As they talked, a little boy ran up to them. His clothes were clean but worn, his shoes patched. "Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Mitchell, look, I solved the arithmetic problem you showed me." Timothy crouched down to the child and looked through the boy's notebook approvingly. "Excellent work, Samuel. Tell your mother I'll stop by tomorrow to check on her leg." When the little boy ran off, Timothy explained to Abigail. "Samuel's mother is a widow. Her husband worked in the mine, had an accident. I take care of her and her children as much as I can." Abigail then began to understand why everyone in town knew Timothy's name. Not just because of his wealth. His help and presence were felt everywhere. Walking home, a group of drunk cowboys appeared on the street. They were being loud and rudely harassed an elderly gentleman. Timothy immediately rushed over. "Gentlemen, this is not appropriate behavior in Helena." One of the cowboys approached Timothy threateningly. "And who are you to tell us what to do?" Timothy responded calmly. "I'm Timothy Mitchell, and this is my town." The cowboys' leader stopped. He had obviously heard the name before. "Mitchell? The mine owner?" Timothy nodded. The man reluctantly stepped back. "We apologize, sir. We didn't know." Timothy turned to the elderly gentleman. "Is everything all right, Mr. Peterson?" The elderly man nodded, thanked him for the help, then continued on his way. That evening, Abigail was reading in Timothy's library when he entered. Timothy sat down across from her. "What do you think of the town so far, Abigail?" Abigail put down the book. "It's an interesting place. Or not what I imagined." Timothy smiled. "And what do you think of me?" Abigail thought for a moment. "I haven't decided yet." On the fifth day, Abigail met Mrs. Olivia Bradley, the owner of the local newspaper. Olivia was different from the other women she had met so far. Determined, independent, and not afraid to speak her mind. "Miss Neville, it was quite bold of Mr. Mitchell to order a mail-order bride." Olivia's words surprised Abigail. "Why do you say that?" Olivia smiled. "Because Timothy Mitchell is the most eligible bachelor in the entire county. Every maiden and widow wants him. But he's always been stubborn. He said he wanted a woman who wouldn't love him for his money." Olivia showed Abigail how the newspaper operated and told her how Timothy had helped her get started. No one else would have given a loan to a woman to start a newspaper. But Timothy saw the opportunity. "He's different from other men here in the West." That evening, Abigail couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the stars. One of the servants, Mary, brought her tea. "Can't you sleep, Miss Neville?" Abigail shook her head. "Too many things on my mind." Mary set down the tea and stood hesitantly. "If I may, miss, Mr. Mitchell is a good man. He helps everyone in need. When I came here, I was pregnant and living on the streets. He gave me work, a home. My son now goes to school. What do you mean by living on the streets?" Mary lowered her eyes. "My father disowned me when he learned I was with child, and the child's father abandoned me. Mr. Mitchell found me on a rainy night and helped immediately. He never asked for anything in return." After Mary left, Abigail thought for a long time. Was it really a lie? Or was it just a person trying his best to find a real companion? On the 6th day, Timothy and Abigail rode out beyond the town. They stopped at a clearing in the mountains, where they could see the entire valley and the town. "When I arrived here, there was hardly anything. A few shacks, a tavern, but I saw the potential. Not just in the silver, in the land, in the place. I wanted to build a place where people could feel safe, where they could raise their children." Timothy gazed into the distance, his expression soft. "My parents were farmers in Pennsylvania. They worked hard all their lives but never had anything. When I found the silver, I swore I'd use it for good, leave something behind." Abigail understood now. Timothy truly was a farmer, and much more than that. That evening they held a celebration at Mitchell House. Timothy didn't say why, but every important person in town was present. Abigail wore a beautiful blue dress that Timothy had given her. The dress fit her perfectly, as if it had been made for her. When she entered the room, all eyes turned to her. Throughout the evening, Abigail met many people. Everyone spoke admiringly of Timothy, his work, and the help he provided to the town. An elderly woman grabbed his hand. "You are very lucky, my dear. Timothy Mitchell is the best man I've ever known. My son works in his mine. When he got sick, Timothy paid for the best doctor to treat him." In the middle of the evening, Timothy raised his glass for a toast. The room fell silent. "My friends, thank you for coming tonight. I invited you to meet this special lady, Miss Abigail Neville. I hope she will soon become Mrs. Mitchell." Abigail froze. This wasn't fair. A public proposal? How could she say no in front of so many people? But Timothy continued. "Of course, only if she wants to. Abigail came here on the condition that after a week she could freely decide whether to stay or leave. Tomorrow is the deadline, and whatever her decision may be, I will respect it." A stunned silence fell over the room, followed by a quiet murmur. They had never seen anything like this. A wealthy man allowing a woman to decide her own fate? That night, Abigail again couldn't sleep. Tomorrow would decide everything, stay or go home. She got up from bed and walked to the window. The moonlight illuminated the garden, and there in the garden she spotted Timothy. He sat alone on a bench, watching the stars. Abigail grabbed a shawl and hurried down to the garden. Timothy was surprised when he saw her. "Can't sleep?" Abigail shook her head and sat down beside him on the bench. "I've been thinking a lot about my decision." Timothy quietly waited for her to continue. "You know, all my life, I was taught that a woman must be obedient, must accept her fate, but I always wanted to be different. I wanted to follow my own path." Timothy nodded. "That's why I liked you from your very first letter. There was something about you, strength, something rare around here." Abigail looked at the moon. "I don't want to be your wife, Timothy." The man's face darkened, but he nodded. "I understand. I'll take care of your travel arrangements in the morning." Abigail continued. "At least, not yet. I barely know you, but I'd like to stay here for a while. Get to know you better, and the town. Maybe I'll find something here that can truly be mine." Hope flickered in Timothy's eyes. "Take all the time you need, Abigail, and whatever you want to do, I'll support you." She woke up early in the morning and walked down to the garden. Timothy was already there, watching the sunset. "So today's the big day," he said quietly. Abigail nodded. Her decision was made, but it was hard to say it out loud. "I wanted a simple life, Timothy, one that's mine, where I could achieve things through my own efforts." Timothy's face saddened, but he nodded. "I understand. The carriage is ready whenever you want to leave." Abigail stepped closer to him. "I'm not finished. I think life isn't always as simple as we imagine. Sometimes we get more than we expected, and sometimes that's a good thing." Hope flickered in Timothy's eyes. "You're saying—" "I'm saying I'm staying, but I have conditions." Timothy smiled. "Anything." Abigail looked deep into his eyes. "The school. I want to teach there." Timothy's laughter filled the garden. "Mrs. Jenkins said you were the most stubborn woman she'd ever met. And she was right." In Montana of 1874, an unusual wedding took place. The groom was the wealthiest man in town, and the bride was a mail-order wife who almost went back home. The church was filled not only with town nobility, but also miners, farmers, widows, and orphans. After Abigail and Timothy Mitchell's wedding, the town developed even faster. At the school, not only boys but also girls could study. The mail-order bride, who thought she was marrying a poor farmer, ended up becoming the owner of a town's heart and a man's heart. The story of the silver miner and the schoolteacher became a legend in the western frontier, where people often said that the greatest treasure is not hidden in the depths of the earth, but in each other's hearts.